A deadly attack on peacekeepers in Darfur throws hopes of resolving the conflict into doubt. Thousands more troops are due to arrive soon, but will it make any difference? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor. The plight of the meagre forces struggling to bring order to Darfur has been brought into sharp focus with the deaths of 10 peacekeeping soldiers. Cornered and out of ammunition, they died in an unprecedented attack by rebels who overran their camp. Up to 40 more are missing. They were among the 7,000 African Union troops battling to maintain order in Darfur, a force widely seen as under-resourced and underfunded. Early pictures show the charred remains of military vehicles left behind at the bombed-out barracks. The raid, which has drawn international condemnation, comes as the UN and AU prepare for a joint peacekeeping mission. That will involve deploying an extra 19,000 soldiers. And there are fears the attack could derail new peace talks between the warring parties due to take place in Libya later this month. Well, as conditions on the ground have deteriorated, trying to decipher who's fighting and what they're fighting for is no easy task. When the conflict started in 2003, there were two main rebel groups. The main one, the Sudanese Liberation Army, or SLA, signed a peace agreement in May 2006. But since signing the peace deal, the SLA has splintered into several factions that have taken up arms. The smaller Justice and Equality movement rejected the 2006 deal. Considered the more radical, it established the National Redemption Front, an umbrella organisation of rebel groups. And this July, a breakaway faction of the Justice movement and the government signed a new and separate peace agreement. With so many competing rebel groups and different peace agreements, it appears that achieving peace in Darfur will be no easy task. Well, the African Union troops assigned to keep the peace in the Darfur region have a daunting mission to protect civilians in an area the size of France. It was last year that the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution approving a UN peacekeeping force for the region. The Sudanese government initially rejected the idea of having non-African troops in Darfur, but this June it agreed to a joint AU and UN force. The new troops are set to be deployed fully in Darfur next year. Some 26,000 will be stationed there in total, the biggest force of its kind in the world. Well, joining us are our guests. In Johannesburg, Aishi Kaji, Director of the International Human Rights Programme at Witwatersrand University. In Washington, David Mozersky, he's the Horn of Africa Project Director at the International Crisis Group. And on the line from Darfur, one of the field commanders of the AU troops. He's asked us not to name him. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the line from there. First of all, could you tell us briefly what happened in the attack?
Yeah, it was an attack which took place just the day before yesterday, precisely. Initially, it was around 7 o'clock in the evening. They came, attacked the AU camp, killing or injuring somebody. And then they came back again in the early hours of the morning and launched a full-scale attack, killing 10 people and injuring as many as 12 people, some other people missing. Though the situation is very clear on the ground on the number of people injured and the number of dead persons, but all those missings have been found alive. That's just the situation for now.
Now, there have been claims and counterclaims about who might be responsible. Who do you think was behind the attack?
Yeah, apparently it's one of the few non-signatory factions to the DPA who perpetrated the deadly act.
Do you think the AU can continue its mission given this kind of attack that it's sustained?
It's not a very big problem. As you have known, it's a common knowledge that the AU and the UN are working together to bring the lasting peace to the region. And in actual fact, it has not deterred our morale and our resolve to bring peace to the region. We are first of all peacekeepers. We are first of all soldiers and policemen. And anywhere we are, we expect some casualty, but not this kind of reasonable or unreasonable attack. It's cowardly.
And so is part of the problem that you don't have the kind of resources you need to defend yourselves properly before you can actually even implement peace on the ground?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we are looking at, the efforts, the support program of the United Nations, or probably even United Nations taking over the mission totally, because the equipments are not there to face this kind of attack. And it is hoped that all this will be on the ground as early as the United Nations moves in.
Now, do you think, I mean, presumably part of what they're trying to do is to send a message to the international community that even if the UN gets there, that's what they can expect, those kind of attacks?
Yeah, it is possible. We are not ruling out that fact. We are not ruling out that fact. This is not the first time this is happening. But the unfortunate thing is that, yeah, apparently, probably they want to hold on to their grounds just before the peace talk. But the whole world should join hands together to condemn this act. It is uncalled for. It is terrible, even in the history of peacekeeping. If the media cannot do something about it, it will be unfortunate, because even the force can react abnormally by going all out to fight, and innocent people will suffer. So, and at the end, we are looking at a robust mandate rather than this very weak mandate the AU is operating on now. It makes the foundation is very weak. It makes AU a kind of failure. So, and the force on the ground, they are not enough to do the job, and definitely in some couple of months we are expecting more.
And just briefly, are you afraid that some of the nations who are involved in the AU force might be reluctant to commit any more troops, given what's happened, or are you confident that there will be enough troops to provide the sort of the enhanced peacekeeping force that's being talked about?
That's obvious. There's no hard and fast rule about it. But first of all, you have to realize that as soldiers, casualties are allowed, but it has to be very, very minimal. And apparently, in a situation where you are being attacked and you cannot fight back, might be very difficult. But it depends on the country. I know most of the countries, they have a resolve to carry on with the peace process, no matter what it comes, no matter the situation. But unfortunately, we are recording too many martyrs in this situation. It's left for the whole world to come together now and give a proper mandate to this mission against all odds. We have all tried to be neutral as possible, but unfortunately we are paying too much for it.
From Darfur, one of the field commanders of the AU troops, thank you very much indeed, sir, for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Well, the problems in Darfur started just 4 years ago. That's when rebel groups took up arms against the government. They claimed that Khartoum discriminated against non-Arab workers in the region. In response, the government used Arab militia to fight the rebels. Some militia destroyed villages, raped and killed civilians. The government denies association with those attacks. Since 2003, it's estimated that more than 200,000 people have died and at least 2.5 million have been displaced in the conflict. The United Nations says Darfur is one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, but has hesitated to call what's happening there genocide. Well, we're joined again by our guests, David Mazersky, who's in Washington, and Aishi Kaji, who's the director of the International Human Rights Programme at Witwatersrand University from South Africa. David Mazersky, if I could come to you first. This attack shows quite how vulnerable the AU is. Can it continue its mission effectively, do you think?
I think the AU has a number of challenges and obstacles that it needs to overcome. First of all, the AU mission is deployed to Darfur for two reasons: to monitor a ceasefire agreement, which is not being implemented and which does not include all the parties to the conflict today, and secondly, to monitor and help implement the Darfur peace agreement, which has not taken hold, which also has not been signed by all parties to the conflict, and which is essentially a dead peace agreement right now. So what's lacking is the political process catching up to the situation on the ground. The AU faces tremendous challenges on the logistical front with regard to funding, equipment, the size of their force, and there needs to be much greater support from the international community and an urgent deployment of the UN-AU hybrid. But beyond that, I think an equal amount of attention needs to go to restarting and reviving the political process so that there can be a new comprehensive ceasefire that's worked out, as well as renewed efforts towards getting a political solution to the process, to the problem.
Aishi Kaji, getting efforts on the political side, but what the commander was saying there is that these kind of attacks tend to happen more when people are building up towards peace talks. Do you think that's part of the problem, that people are trying to position themselves?
I think that is part of the problem. People are trying to regain lost ground. There have been many shiftings of allegiances in various rebel factions throughout Darfur over the past few months. You mentioned yourself that a splinter group from GEM signed an agreement with the Khartoum government. There was an agreement signed in Al Janaina in June. So there's a lot of shifting of allegiances, but more than anything else, Lauren, I believe that the signing of the DPA last year without the input of two major factions, that's the SLA splinter group of Abdul Wahid al-Nur and the JM, the Justice and Equality Movement, without those two movements actually signing that agreement, what has happened is that the AU troops on the ground are seen to have compromised their neutrality because they are tasked, as David has said, with implementing the DPA. But the only major faction that signed the DPA was Mini Minawi's group of the SLA. Given that, civilians and the other rebel factions in the area seem to believe now that the AU is there on behalf of Mini Minawi's group, and that has inflamed tensions against the AU mission, which prior to the signing of the DPA was actually doing a good job of keeping the peace where they were able to.
OK, we're going to take a very quick break now, but do stay with us, both of you, because when we come back we'll be taking a closer look at some of the possible solutions to the conflict. Do stay with us.